Welcome back, everyone, to another episode. Today, we are speaking with Randy Bruegman. Randy is the founder and president of the Leadership Crucible Foundation and is a retired fire chief. 40 years of local government service. Thank you for that, Chief. He is also a noted author, a lecturer on leadership and managing change, and a podcast host. Randy, welcome to the show.
Hi, Enrique. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
We're going to be talking about fireproofing leadership, or something that Chief is familiar with. I am also familiar with as being a what we call a sea-going firefighter.
Yeah.
Everybody that goes out to sea has to fight their own fires. But before we get into that, Chief, tell us a little bit about you.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. And the opportunity to serve with you on the board on the foundation's been, a real pleasure. So thanks for the time that you commit to that. But I grew up I was born in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and my father was a plumber, had a small plumbing company. And so when I was 8, he unexpectedly passed away. And so my mom said, I can't continue to run the shop, and didn't really have much family there other than my sisters, and they were pretty much grown and out of the house. And so she said, we're going to move back to Nebraska because that's where the family was at. Most of his family and some of hers were in Wyoming. So ended up growing in a very small community called Cozad in Nebraska. And at the time when I was growing up, I mean, it was I was working construction at 12 and 13. So it was just a different time. So I had, it was a really great place to grow up, good value set, small community. Everybody knew who you were. It was one of those places where if you went and did something wrong across town, they would take care of you there. And then they would call your, in my case, my mother, and say, hey, we caught your kid doing something wrong and we took care of it. And then when you get home, you get it again. So it was just a really nice place to grow up, but it also taught me a great deal about work ethic. I think that's one of the tenets of not only personal success, but just being an effective and a good leader is you have to be willing to do more than you're asking others to do. So it was just that's kind of where I grew up. I didn't have any concept about going into the fire service. I thought I was going to build houses. In fact, because that's what my brother-in-laws did, and I was working with them, through my formative years, and that's kind of what I thought my path and journey was going to be. And then my brother-in-law was a volunteer firefighter, and he said, hey, we need some help, and we want you to join. And so I went ahead and joined the volunteer fire department. And after about a year and several calls, just really became attached to it. I said, I really like this. I really like to go out and help people and serve people, and I think I'm good enough at it to do it. And I know people actually get paid to do this. And so I started to look around and took a test, took 3 or 4 tests, and actually had a couple of job offers in some very small communities in Nebraska. And for some reason, I just said, what, that's just not for me. I said, if I'm going to make the switch, I want to go to a little bit bigger place that has some growth opportunity. And so I went to Fort Collins, Colorado, and I just felt very fortunate that I got through the process. They were hiring 8 people, and there were about 1,500 applicants. Over 2 days, they were testing. I just remember walking into Colorado State University, one of the big amphitheaters that hold several hundred people, and it was absolutely full. And I'm going, there's absolutely no way that I'm going to be able to do this. But I did. I just got lucky. I mean, it was truly luck, and I think. And so anyway, went through the academy, and in the academy, I was, it was one of those issues where was kind of like boot camp. You know, in the day, it's a little bit better now. Still very difficult, but Chief walked in the first day and said, "Look around the room," and there was about 28 of us because it was a multi-jurisdictional academy, and he said, hey, 8 or 9 of you are not going to be here in 10 weeks. And after every week, somebody would disappear, or they would call them out of class and never return. And sometimes you could see it coming, but other times you couldn't. So about week 9, I get called in. And I thought, well, this must be it. I don't know what I did, but I thought I was doing okay. And so I walked in, and the 2 chiefs and the training captain were sitting there, and they must have saw the look on my face and said, "Hey, you're not getting let go. You're going to make the academy." Right. And so they said, "Look, number 1, you're going to speak at graduation." And I said, "What? I don't like speaking." And they said, "Well, you have to get over that." But they said, that's not why we called you in here." They said, you just look at things a little bit differently, and you analyze things differently. And we think you could be maybe a fire chief officer someday. So once you get off probation, you should probably think about preparing yourself, if that's what you'd like to do, to be able to do that. And look at what the education will be needed to do that, and what some of the skill sets you need to build upon if you choose to go that path. Which was, I look back now, and that was extremely good mentorship to be able to do that. So, got through and got out, and 14 years later was a fire chief.
You mentioned community. I think that one of the things that are missing nowadays is that sense of community, where someone would find you doing something wrong and say, "I'm gonna call your mama, but I'm gonna take care of that right now."
Yeah.
And then they're gonna go ahead and make sure that it's all wrapped up at the end on their side. But community is missing. I see a lot of it missing from when you was growing up, from when I was growing up. It still was part of our upbringing, and a lot of it's missing now. But you also mentioned those core fundamentals, those things that are building blocks, that are pillars to our future existence. And we'll talk about mentorship, because you're right, that was a keen eye to pick you out and say, and give you a little taste of your future, right?
Yeah.
Right off the bat.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if he wouldn't have planted that seed at the time, if that would have become a reality. I don't know. Once I left the academy, that was the only thing I could think of is, you need to look at and determine what the path is to do that. That's how much of an impact it had on me. And I've interviewed thousands of people to hire, and you can see when they come through, even during their interview process, they separate themselves out. You can see that talent level kind of emerge out. And so, yeah, it was just one of those. I wouldn't say it was divine intervention, but it was for me. Right.
Absolutely. And when you mention core things that help us, and they kind of gave you that little nugget, you might want to look at some things in the future if you want to go down that route. But what are the core skills that leaders should focus on to build a strong foundation for fireproofing their leadership?
Well, I think there's some basic tenets. One is, an overarching tenet is you have to start with leading yourself, right? And if you're not going to lead yourself and manage yourself to be the best that you can be, you're never probably going to ever attain a position where you can lead others, because that's in most cases, that's a right that you earn. And some of the, core elements that, I think are important, are, things like respect for others, respect for position, having a strong work ethic, is absolutely critical. I don't care at what level of the organizations you're at. If you want to be successful, you have to have a strong work ethic. I think you have to have integrity along with that. And I think you also have to have a high degree of accountability and reliability. We've chatted previously about the lack of accountability that we see in leadership today, and the lack of accountability that we see in just the individual and taking responsibility to create their own path. You mentioned that the community used to be able to, the community had a level of accountability and reliability that you could count on that we need to recapture. The same is true for individuals today, many individuals, not everyone, but everybody's looking for maybe an easy path or that handout. And the fact of the matter is, you can get a handout, but if you're not accountable, it's not going to last very long, right? So, personal responsibility, personal accountability, really, really key. I think another one that is often overlooked is courage, because to be successful, and no matter what you choose to do in life, you have to have the courage to take the step, to persevere, to stand up when you see something that's not right. And so often today, we don't have courageous leadership. We have lemmingship, where people just, they on social media, they see something and they just believe it. Or they just follow the path that everybody else is walking down the road on, and it could be the wrong path. And so you have to have the courage to stand up and go, you know what, that's not right. And I think that's a core trait in leading yourself. I think there's two other areas that are really important for success for a person in creating good leaders. And one is you have to have a growth mindset. And allow yourself to be and push yourself to be uncomfortable, right? We never learn when we're in our comfort zone, because that's just what we know. And when you push yourself outside of that is when you really start to see what you can do. And sometimes when you see what you can do, it opens other doors for you to continue to explore. And so often we don't allow ourselves to do that. And I think the last thing is passion. I go back to, you asked me how I started. I think I found my passion by accident, right? If it wouldn't have been for my brother-in-law saying, hey, why don't you come on and help us? Well, okay, that sounds like a good idea. I found something that I was really passionate about. And everybody that I'd met that had been successful and happy in life, follow their passion. If they really love what they're doing, then it doesn't feel like work. It feels like you're following what your destiny what your destiny is. And so, those are just kind of some of the things that I look at from a leadership and a personal development standpoint that I think are really, really important.
Now, you talk about mindsets that you need to be successful as a leader. Are there specific mindset shifts that leaders need to make in order to embrace uncertainty and maybe lead confidently in challenging times?
Well, I think as one is to understand where you're at individually, because as I think her name's Carol Dweck, determined in some of her work at Stanford was, you kind of fall into two camps. There's a fixed mindset, and then there's a growth mindset. And a lot of people and also a lot of organizations have a fixed mindset. This is where we're at. We really can't expand out. We're not going to be able to develop ourselves or our organization or change course. And it's a one-way ticket. So you are where you are. And so if you find yourself and you look at, I think in a good example is, I think I was born with what I've got, right? I can never learn anything else. And if you think that you're personally, then you have a fixed mindset. But people that have a growth mindset, they said, well, I was born with a certain set of skills, but I know I can continue to develop and expand, my horizons and my skill sets. And so they have a growth mindset. Same is true with organizations. So I think from a leader's perspective, again, it's about pushing yourself to do things that maybe you don't like to do, or they scare you. A little fear is always good to push you. So if you're looking at something that is a little bit fearful, or a job or something that you think, I don't know if I can do that, maybe you should take the leap and see if you can do it, because you never know what door that's going to open.
And growth demands of us some level of flexibility, adaptability. So, how can leaders cultivate adaptability and flexibility to better respond to challenges in leadership?
Well, I think adaptability and responsibility. Hopefully, they've developed that before they get into the position, right? Although I've worked with some leaders that that was a real challenge for them. They were really good at dictating things, but they weren't really good at walking their own walk, so to speak, right? But I think the development side of adaptability is mindset. It goes back to mindset, and in fact, I was just given a discussion, or facilitating a discussion with a excuse me, a department the other day about what's your trajectory in the future. And they were at a place where they were really fixed in what they had always done. And after the discussion, I had several come up and say, sometimes you just have to look past the horizon, if you will, and to look past what is, and ask yourself what could be, if we change things up. And when you start to have that self-dialogue, then I think it promotes the concept within you and your organization about adaptability. Another key piece in today's environment, we know that the environment around us in our organizations is changing exponentially fast due to technology, data, all of the other things, AI, that are coming to play right now. So think of this, we're walking at a speed, and we may have walked at the same speed for all of our life, and all of a sudden the world around us is speeding up. So what happens if you don't keep up with it? You become irrelevant, right? In your job, in your personal life, all of these things. So adaptability is really critical, I think, for not only a person's success, but I think also a person's happiness today. Is you've got to be flexible and adaptable, and that takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of internal discussion about how you develop, because everybody's different. So what works for one person may not work for another, but I think you have to focus on what works for you to become more adaptable and flexible.
And those times of self-reflection and seeing how adaptable you have to be, and how much work you really have to put into leadership, because it's not easy to, well, first of all, to focus on yourself and get that going, where it's a reflection of your leadership, but also to look upon your people and see how they need you to be, right? A leader. Sometimes we have it in our head that, hey, this is the type of leader I am. And then your compliment doesn't require that. And you talk about relevance, and we've had a conversation around relevance and how that is a very important piece to leadership. And most of the time, people are looking to be relevant, but it does take a level of empathy as a leader to see outside of you. Hopefully, you got your stuff right, but see outside of you and what your your team requires. So how does leading with empathy contribute to building a fireproof leadership style?
Well, I think it goes back to that you have to walk with empathy yourself. Because if you're empathetic in your own life, um, I think you'll be an empathetic and a humble leader. Uh, my mother, I remember this conversation with her uh, probably when I was about 10 or 11. We were at a restaurant and people were serving us and things like that. And she said, I just want to remind you, it doesn't make a difference what a person does in life. Everyone has value. And if you approach life that everyone has value until they prove that they don't have value, because there are some individuals that, do really, really bad things. But she said, no matter what a person's doing, whether they're mopping the floor or they're a surgeon in town, she said, everybody's got value. So if you look at people in that way, I think from a leader's perspective, you immediately become empathetic. Because you're looking at them not in the position that they're in. And I've seen so many people that, I've seen people that treat people that will wait tables, wash dishes, working in the streets, that they look down on. And to me, that's true sign that they're not leaders, because we all have people in our organizations at all different levels. When you run a large organization, and that can be from, the entry level employee to, the first year secretarial staff to the people that are cleaning the building, they're all important and they all have a role to play, and we need to value that role. So if if you can take that perspective and appreciate and value everyone, and most importantly, take the time to show them that you do value them. That goes a long way to developing your leadership skill set, but it also goes a long way to creating an environment in your organization that people want to be there and want to do their best, no matter what position they're in.
And talk about a refined leader, right? We're talking about fireproofing leadership. That surely is a indicator of a refined leader that has gone through some things, can look inward, can look outward, make that match, and say, hey, this is the best way to lead you in these circumstances. Now, talking about fire, talking about the crucible, talking about this type of interchanging of a leader that defines their future. Can you share a personal or professional experience where you faced adversity and how it shaped your leadership approach?
Yeah, from a leadership perspective, we often I've had similar questions like this about, and everybody expects you to answer, well, it was this fire or it was this incident. And I've been on some really bad incidents that, I can recall immediately, and I'm sure you've seen some stuff too. But that's not what shapes me as a leader. I think what shaped me as a leader is some of the inconsistencies that I saw with the people that I had to work with or for. And when you work in local government, you work with city managers, county managers, and you work with a lot of elected officials. And so probably what has helped shape me the most is the inconsistency of elected officials and saying one thing and doing another. Because I've seen them say one thing on the dais, and I've seen them talk about other things when they're off the dais, and they're totally 180-degree separation. And to me, that shows their lack of leadership, because what they really believe they won't do because they're looking to get reelected. So from a leader's perspective, I took away that you just always have to walk your walk. You have to be consistent in what you say and your actions, because if you don't, people will look at you in a totally different way. And so I guess that's my, those, and I've had multiple experiences over my 27 years as a fire chief in dealing with situations like that, where you just, you walk out of the closed door session and you're just shaking your head going, that just doesn't make any sense. And or you watch something on TV and they're talking about how great this is and they're going to do this, and you know what, that's not going to work. It's just not going to work. It's not well thought out. And so those are the lessons that I take away and I try not to do. That doesn't mean I was always successful in not, making a stupid decision here or there. But I think one of the things that good leaders do is when you make a wrong decision, you learn from that, and you put that in, in your backpack, and you say, let's not do that again, and you learn from it. A lot of people don't.
If there's anything to create adversity or enough friction to create a fire, is an inconsistent leader. Everybody gets to see that. And the funny thing is that inconsistent leader doesn't even realize it, but they're putting on a show for everyone to witness, and sometimes it's a very sad show to see. So a great example there. Now,
well, I think one of the quotes that I heard, this recently heard, is like, I can't hear what you're saying because I'm watching what you're doing.
and when you got that type of opposition, I don't know what's going to help you there. Tell us a little bit about the Crucible Foundation, and also anything that you may have coming up, and how can folks get a hold of you and the foundation?
Well, really originally formed the Leadership Crucible Foundation, probably out of a bit of frustration. As I was looking around the landscape of what we call leaders today, I was becoming increasingly frustrated by the role models that were being created for our next generation of leaders. And so we created the foundation to basically around two tenets: is to talk about those experiences with leaders in multiple professions throughout all walks of life, about some of the crucibles they faced and how it shaped them to become a better leader, better person, but also to really focus on two core issues that we have at the foundation. And that is, if you do these two things from a leadership perspective, you'll walk away at the end of a career or end of an assignment, and you say, job well done. And that is, pay it forward to the people that you're working with and people that are working for you, and leave the organization, leave the situation better than you found it when you got there. And, if you think about it, if everybody in life did that throughout their day-to-day life, and they tried to pay it forward to others, and they tried to leave things better than they found it, and that may be as simple as picking up a piece of trash in their in their neighborhood, or when you're walking down the street, or just helping your neighbor out, or whatever, our world would be a better place. And so that was really the genesis of the foundation. So, I brought together an incredible, talented board and an advisory council that have kind of helped us steer where we're going. And, our ultimate goal is to reach as many leaders throughout not only the United States, but worldwide, to start to impart some of the knowledge that we're gaining just from talking to these people and writing our newsletter. But also, we're in the development of a series called the Pathway to Success. And it's going to focus on your personal success, your leadership success, and how to build a successful organization. So that's kind of what we're focused on right now. And so, that's a little bit about the foundation.
Outstanding, folks. I will make sure to have the links to the foundation, a way to contact Chief here if you want to get into some fire stories. I'm sure he got one or two to share with you. But it's been so good to share this time with you, Chief Randy. It's what you're doing with the foundation, what you're doing now post local government service is still impacting the community. And we mentioned earlier that sense of community is missing, but you're bringing that back with what you're doing. So I'm grateful and thankful to share time and space with you.
No, well, thank you, Enrique. Appreciate it. And I'll see you soon.
All right, everybody. Today's episode is sponsored by Fantail Services and Superpass, which are powering our website and app, Southern Sweet and Sassy Coffee, and Harchester, London. If you've enjoyed this episode and learned something interesting about the topic covered today, please make sure to subscribe and let us know by leaving a comment. And we're always looking for new ideas and guests to have on our show. If you know someone or a topic that you would like covered or featured on the podcast, please let us know. Or if you want to sponsor our show, do that by emailing us at triadleadershipsolutions@gmail.com. And be sure to tune in next week for another episode where we dissect leadership from another angle. And as we like to end the show, success to you.